Welcome back to this Saturday morning. It's a bit rainy here today. I've got I'll start again. I've got with me a Mr. Pete Chambers. Welcome, Pete. This
Hi.
is the man who's the brainchild behind the Coventry Music Museum, otherwise known as the Two-Tone Village. So, Mr. Pete Chambers,
Hi.
how do you do? I'd just like to ask you a few questions.
So fine.
If you like, look towards the camera, that would help. So, before we go into the Two-Tone Village, if you'd like, give me a brief. The ska music. Were you into this all your life? When did you get into it?
Yeah, well, I was into ska and reggae and Trojan sort of music right in the early days. I was one of the original sort of skinheads. I say skinheads, we were more suede heads because your mum and dad didn't like you having everything taken off, you know. So we had a bit of hair, but we were kind of sharper than the actual skinheads. But
so what sort of period are we talking there? We're talking
70, 71, 72. So, you know, a few years before the two-tone.
So it was after the mod movement.
Yeah, after the mod movement, but it was like, you know, when
the follow-on.
Follow-on, the skinheads.
So did you have a Lambretta?
I didn't, no, I didn't. But that was more of a mod thing, really, rather than the skinhead
But
thing.
the early skinheads did have their...
Yeah, some of them did, yeah, but none of us, we were all too young. I mean, we were only sort of 14, 15 at the time, so we weren't old enough to ride a Lambretta or drive a car.
So when you followed this through to the next sort of movement, which would be the late 70s, did you sort of come out of the scene, or was it always been part of you?
It's always been there, but I'm a music lover per se, you know, so I love all types of music. The only one I can't get into, you know, it always causes a bit of a dilemma, but modern jazz. But apart from that, I'm into just about every sort of genre of music. So the funny thing is, for me, and from my mates as well, we were like skinheads sometimes, but occasionally, I remember I was caught one night going to Deep Purple.
Deep Purple?
Deep Purple. To be honest, most of us grew up, you know, I mean, ska reggae music I loved, but I also loved other, but I suppose really rock music is the big one in my life, always has been, always will be. You know, when I go home now, I'm not listening to the Specials necessarily, I listen to Metallica and people like that, you know.
Okay.
You know, and you know, that's the way it is. But I remember being caught out once. I was about to go up to the Coventry Theatre to see Deep Purple. So instead of actually wearing my suede head skinhead stuff, the guys caught me, and I got my red loons on, and I got like a pendant and all that, and me plum jacket. And they were all saying, "What are you doing? Why are you dressed like that?" So, you know, that's exactly as it was. You know, depending what kind of music you were going to see. And then we started going to a place called the Lounge, which figures heavily in the two-tone story in Coventry. But at the time, they were playing lots of prog rock and heavy rock. And we used to go there.
What is this?
This again was like the early 70s. It's sort of 74, you know, a bit later, 73, 74, 75. And then we gradually, I think I stopped, you know, being a cultural animal and wearing the certain clothes. So after that, we dressed how we dressed. But yeah, so for a while it was kind of like Jekyll and Hyde, depending how things were. And I think a lot of people were like, certainly all my mates were the same. You know, one day they were all in the Trulbies and the skinhead stuff, and the next day they were looking like going to see, you know, the Rolling Stones, and they were wearing all the loons and stuff.
So where was you about sort of the late 70s when it sort of kicked in again with the Quadrophenia film coming out, and you got a lot of the mods returned, and ska, the Specials obviously made big time around here in Coventry?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, for us it was really exciting. I mean, of course, after punk had sort of died its death, you know, it was a great movement, of course, and everybody was looking to see where the next great movement was coming from, and they were all looking towards London, and surprise, surprise, it wasn't coming from London, it was coming from little old Coventry. So being a music fan from Coventry, you know, you could just imagine how exciting it was, you know. And I remember I was at one of the first gigs at Mr. George when they were the Coventry Automatics, and they had a residency there for about, I think it was like 3 weeks or something, so every Monday night, maybe more than that. But I was there, definitely, and did I see the future of two-tone and Coventry music? Well, no, I didn't. I can't remember very much about that gig. The ironic thing is I was actually paid in by a friend of mine who later on became a wife of one of the specials. I won't mention which one, but
Go on,
no,
mention
no,
which
no,
one.
I won't. But it doesn't matter. But anyway, yeah, it's in my diary, and there we are, which is kind of like strange. But I don't remember very much about the gig. But I was there right at the beginning, you know, before that. I remember my mate saying later on, we heard this record on the radio, Screech and Breaks, and of course it was Gangsters. And my mate saying, this is the one, that's the band we went to see. And it was like, wow, that was the band we went to see. They sound a bit different now, you know. Of course, originally they were trying to meld the two genres of reggae and the energy of punk rock together. And of course, it wasn't working that well. And then, of course, they sped the whole thing up for ska with punk and the speed of punk as well. And suddenly it dovetailed and it worked. So obviously they've got that great formula. So from that start of that, and I remember going on holiday in the early days, you know, when Gangsters was number 6 in the, you know, reached number 6 in the British charts. We were in Spain and we were all dancing around. And I remember, you know, we were the first ones to get badges made. We actually had badges long before all the other millions that were launched after that. But we were the first ones, and they were like, you know, the cardboard ones, but they looked good. And there we were in Spain, and despite the fact they said no requests, I went up and asked them, can you put Gangsters on? And I remember that. They put Gangsters on, and we were all there from Coventry, and it was like, it was a sense of pride, and we never had that in your city before. Suddenly you were proud, because this was our band, you know.
Yeah.
Because we always used to see the guys around Coventry, like the place called the Dog and Trumpet, and all the different venues, you know, at the Lanch and that. And we always thought, God, this is dead weird, you know, they're just ordinary people, which of course they were. But it always felt really weird to us that we've seen all these guys that were on top of the pops last week, and there they were, you were talking to them, and you gave them one of your badges because they liked it because you had Coventry Scarboy on it, and things like that. And then of course years later, when I know them all as friends, it was even weirder for them, you know, obviously the reality of being just 7 guys playing music in Coventry, and then the next week they're on top of the pop. So it was kind of weird. It was weird for us, but weirder for them. But it was just a great time. You know, it was very exciting.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I know Madness are a London band, but didn't they almost come to Two-Tone label? Their first hit.
Their first hit was
Was on
Prince,
Two-Tone.
it was, as was the beat. You know, this was the idea of Jerry Dammers. They could have signed to another record label probably for more money, but he wanted this part of it so he could bring other bands on and help them, which they did, of course, and you know, the Body Snatchers and lots of others, and Rico and lots of other people were on the Two-Tone record label. But that was the idea that was Jerry Dammers. He wanted that intervention. He wanted that little clause, so you could. Can't remember. I think it was £1,000 or something each band got to make a record. And of course, it launched a lot of bands, and including Madness and including the Beat from Birmingham.
Obviously, it worked for Madness to stick with the mainstream London type of thing because they obviously became massive out of it. But the Specials didn't do too bad sticking local to Two-Tone, did they?
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, the Specials. Well, again, the Specials started off very much ska. The first album was very ska, and then the second album. I mean, people forget this now. We've moved on. You know, when people go and see the Specials and they hear all those songs together, you know, mashed up, nobody thinks, oh, that's the first album, that's the More album. But at the time, of course, when More Specials, the second album came out, everybody was a bit, whoa, what's this? You know, Muzak, Lift Muzak, and it was completely different, and there wasn't so much of the ska stuff going on. But like the guys in the band always say, you know, if you've done it once, you don't need to do it again. You know, hence like the last album they just put out, you know. So, and that's the philosophy of the band, and I think it's served them well. But yeah, absolutely, it was exciting.
And as you said before, you just touched on when Coventry lads was abroad and that, they are a sort of it's a close-knit society really, Coventry. They love the Special, they love their own sort of thing. I remember coming into Coventry on my scooter, early 80s, and it was quite a rough place. I mean, I'll come into the city centre, I'll put my hand out to turn right and somebody nicked my watch. But, but is it still like that around here?
Not really. I think we've moved on, you know. I think every city's got that. I mean, obviously we're a city of culture at the moment.
Yes.
I think, you know, every city's got its problems, you know, with things going on. I mean, some of the places it's even worse with knives and stabbings and drive-bys, you know. I mean, touch wood, we don't get a lot of that. I mean, there's been stabbings, obviously, but that happens in every city. I mean, you know, I don't particularly go around Coventry City Centre on a Saturday night. You know, I'm too old for that. But I think, you know, generally it's moved on, and the times I have been out on Saturday nights and other nights in the week now, because of City of Culture, it's quite vibrant, and it's a completely different place. You know, a sort of couple of years ago, if you go out sort of 6 o'clock in the evening when all the shops are closed, there's nobody about. It is like a ghost town. But since City of Culture, it's been amazing. There's so many people moving around and looking, and it gets you quite excited, the fact that this is your city and people are coming to visit.
Okay, so moving on to newer times, this is your baby, this is your idea, the two-tone village. When did this idea sort of come about? How did it come about? How did you sort of think this is what I want to do? Where did that come from? And what sort of time? How long ago?
Right, well, it's been something sort of in my mind for many, many years. You know, I've always been excited by music tourism. I didn't realise it was called that at the time, but, you know, that's what it is. And I suppose I started off, a friend of mine, this story has gone on and on and on, I've said this many times, but a friend of mine was approached years ago by two Japanese girls, tourists in the city centre, who wanted to know where's the two-tone, you know, they're broken English, bless them. And my friend had to say, well, there isn't any. And he reported that to me, and I thought, wow, this is a global brand that they're aware of, but nothing's happening. And there was a thing in Q magazine about two-tone trail, and I took my lead from that, you know, and I created the two-tone trail, you know, in Coventry, where you could go around, and it still exists now. We've got books and everything, and there's plaques on various places, so you could go around and tour Coventry. With all the pertinent sites that figure in the story of two-tone, and that was there, and that was the, you know, that was enough. But it wasn't enough, of course. You know, once that went out, we sold those books at the tourist agency, and we had badges as well. But after that, I knew this was going to happen.
That's the trouble when you're popular. Everyone wants to speak to you when you're popular.
Coventry Music Museum.
So we'll just take a quick pause here while this Peter Chambers takes a phone call. Might be from the specials or madness, we don't know.
Not at the moment. I'm doing an interview at the moment. I'm actually on camera.
Live TV.
If you go, they're there today. If you go on,
or mobile phones.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of something. Can you ring back about in an hour's time? Sorry, you can edit all this, can you? That won't go out like that.
Hopefully not. We will do our best to edit that.
Sorry about that. Yeah, let me turn. I'm just thinking. I bet this phone goes off. Let me switch that off. I'm so sorry about that.
No problem.
And I was in mid-flow as well.
You was in mid-flow. We was talking about you was getting things, placards around the city and that. Did you have to get much arm twisting from the council to let them do that, or did they buy into the idea relatively easily?
To be honest, most of the plaques, apart from one at the Canal Basin, that was the only one which caused a little bit, and the council, it was council owned. That was the only one that caused any problems, and people from the council who were friends of mine that I happen to know were quite friendly about it, but it was still a bit red tape, or you should have done this and you should have done that. But other than that, no, everything was like private property, and we had one on 51 Albany Road, which of course is Jerry Dammer's old flat. And I remember contacting the landlord completely out of the blue, and you can imagine some bloke on the phone saying, "Can we put a plaque on your property that you own?" It was where the specials and blah de blah, and it was like this guy who knew nothing about the specials or anything about the flat, of course. And but he said, "Oh, well, all right." He was a bit reticent. He said, "Okay, I'll bring me back next week." Anyway, he'd obviously done his work. He'd gone online. And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's brilliant," you know. So most of the time, people are pretty good about it. And like we had a plaque yesterday for the Lieutenant Pigeon, so we did that as well. And we've got some others coming from the railway station. That's a bit of an exclusive, actually. I haven't revealed that. I don't know when this goes out because I'm not supposed to say that. But anyway, never mind.
The other thing was, how long has this been in the process now? This has been. I mean, I've heard this for a few years, as I said earlier. But you actually said it was. The Coventry Two-Town Village was opened how long ago?
Well, we understand how this works. Now, people get confused, and I can understand it. We're in the Two-Town Village. the Coventry Music Museum is located in the Two-Tone Village. We're not a ska museum, we're the Coventry Music Museum, and we're part of the Two-Tone Village, but we're not exclusively two-tone. I want to get that over because people think, you know, we call us the Two-Tone Museum, and we're not a two-tone museum. It's that, admittedly, a lot of it is dedicated to two-tone because it was the biggest music genre to come out of the city, obviously, and people expect that, but it's far more than that. So so the idea was there was a guy called Jeff Holden who had a shop, and he wanted to actually bring scooter shop here. And he found this place. Well, I was totally aware of it. It had been closed for 17 years because the guy in charge didn't get any planning permission. So I always remember it's right by my house. I only live 4 minutes away, so I'm aware of this. Anyway, they opened it up one day. Suddenly, they obviously eased the planning permission, and they let them open it. So there was a bit of a rough cafe here at the time, not the one that's here now, I might add. This is a brilliant cafe. And they opened it up, and we thought, oh, wow, this is a great idea, and it kind of grew from there. The original idea was that it was going to be like a scooter shop where the venue is now, and then suddenly we started doing like events, and we got the Coventry Music Wall of Hits outside, and we did ceremonies for that. And suddenly, eureka moment! This could be more than you know. So anyway, that's where that came out. So the actual the village, excluding the museum, has been around here probably 10 years, I think.
10 years.
Yeah, but we obviously were looking for the money. I mean, for us, it was very much like, you know, the train going along the track. You go so far, buy some new rails and move on a little bit when you got a bit more money. And that's exactly what it was like here, trying to get the money. Eventually, we managed to get a good grant, and we were able to open. But we were about 2 years after. That's why we were doing like the Coventry Music Wall of Hits, because that was occupying my time. That was something I could get involved in at the time before we had the museum. So that's how that started. You know, I mean, obviously taking it from the Two-Tone Trail, I created other things in Coventry, and we had the Coventry Stars, as they're called now, and basically the stars from all famous Coventrians. And I knew that, you know, when everybody voted, that they were going to put a tangible place. There it was, and it was going to be dedicated to the specials, which happened. So there was a place in the city that you could actually go to and worship at the shrine of Two-Tone.
And they deserve that, to be
Yeah, absolutely. And then later on the next year, the Selector got on there as well. And for what it's worth, Pete Waterman, who was kind of a partial manager, depending which special you talk to, of the specials, yeah.
Well, looking around the actual exhibition, I noticed there's a lot of other input from, like the likes of King. I didn't realise he was Coventry.
Yeah, King of Coventry. And funny enough, if there was a chart of I didn't know they were from Coventry chart, it would be Hazel O'Connor. But so many people.
Yes, I know.
Hazel O'Connor would be up there, and everybody else would be down there. Everybody says, I didn't know Hazel O'Connor was from Coventry. But yeah, it's nice to hear that. The King. Yeah, King. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not just about Two-Tone. There's King, the Enemy, and then you've got the older people like Frank Highfield and people like that. You know, Vince Hill.
I've also noticed Lieutenant Pigeon. I don't know if anybody out there remembers Lieutenant Pigeon.
Yeah,
Lieutenant
or Lieutenant Pigeon, whichever one you call it.
But what's that? Was that up and coming? Is that happening now? Is that?
Yeah. Well, what that is 50 years. It was they called it a novelty number one. It was number one for 4 weeks, and it was basically an instrumental with somebody shouting "Moldy Holdo," and that was released 50 years ago yesterday. I don't know how timed you are going to be on this, but as we speak, it was on the end. That was released 50 years ago on the 18th of February, 19. I'm getting it all wrong here.
No problem.
We can do this
So
again.
we're talking about 1970.
Yeah, it was released 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway. Let's put it that way. We don't need dates.
No.
And we had a big. We unveiled a blue plaque, or they did, on the house where it was recorded. It was recorded in the front room, literally the next street down from where we are, Kingsway, 25 Kingsway. It was recorded in there, and the front room, the mother. It was quite famous because it remains the only number one record that features a mother and son. Rob Woodward's mom, and her piano is just outside here. We have the piano. And the son, and she let them have her front room as a recording studio. We've got a mock-up of it upstairs, And it was a freak sort of happening because it's such a weird thing, and it's got, I won't bore you with all the details, but there's so many weird things going on with it. I mean, it actually in the end sold 2 million copies worldwide, which is amazing if you think about that. But it was a funny old thing, and it was the fact that it was released and it died a death, and then there was a Belgium TV show, a bit like the One Show now, a magazine sort of program, and they picked it up on it and used it as their theme tune. Now, of course, that was being played twice in and out every day of the week, and all these Belgians would, what's this? You know, like you say, like the guy in the band himself said, if you play a record, the worst record in the world 5 times a day, it will be a hit. And I'm not saying it's a bad record, I love it. But that's what happened. It got to number 1 in Belgium, and then of course Decca in Britain thought, "Oh, we'll try that again," and they tried it again. And of course, it went up the charts, got to number 1 for 4 weeks. And my favourite, I've got to tell you this, my favourite bit of Coventry music trivia is when that was number 1 in the UK, and remember it was recorded just down the road in the front room. Over in America, rock and roll superstar Chuck Berry had recorded a song called "My Ding-a-Ling." He's only number 1. Both sides of the Atlantic, and that was recorded live in Coventry. So both the number 1s either side of the Atlantic for that week, or that couple of weeks I think it was, they were both recorded in Coventry. And I don't think we're ever going to see that one again.
No.
That was a bit quick jumping in there. No.
No one says wow.
Oh wow, sorry.
Wow.
I thought you said no.
Definitely not no. I said,
No,
wow.
that's all right.
I also noticed when I was looking around, there's like not a rehearsing studio, but live bands play here as well.
Yeah, there it is. Just to explain the village, you've got a couple of shops. There's a shop that sells basically all the clothes, you know, all the gear and everything that you could want. There's another shop that sells all memorabilia, records, badges, patches, all types of things, signed books and everything. There's the 2 shops. There's us, obviously, the museum. You've got the wall of hits outside, the Coventry Music Wall of Fame. And then, of course, you've got the cafe, the Two-Tone Cafe. There's Simmer Down Restaurant, Caribbean Restaurant. And then we've got the actual Nights, Nights nightclub, I think they call it. And that's where they put gigs on. I mean, it's only small. It's about 120 capacity. But it's kind of like, gets back, you know, they play all kinds of music. But it has to be said, 80% of the genre is ska or reggae. And when it gets going, it's brilliant on the night, because you go in there, you sweat, sweat up the walls type syndrome, and then you come out into the courtyard, which of course is away from the shops and everything, away from the road, and you can come out, cool down, and stand there and have your beer, and it's brilliant. So it works really well. I mean, we've always called it, it's like a youth club for adults. That's what we've always called it.
Do you ever get any of the local famous people turn up and do a bit of jamming down there?
We do quite often. I mean, not necessarily jamming. I mean, on the stage down there, we've had lots and lots of people playing on the stage. You know, Dave and Ansel Collins, they actually came up into the museum and they started doing Monkey Spanner, and it was like, you know, that we're going back to the days I've just mentioned in the early 70s. And who would ever thought that record that meant so much in those days? And there they are, the guys doing it live in front of me. And Susan Cadogan, she's been on the stage there, of course, Pauline Black and all the guys, and Neville Staples and Christine. They are just so great what they do, you know, with their patrons. They help us a lot. So a lot of them have been in here. Yeah, all the Two-Tone gang pretty much have been in here.
Walking around upstairs, I did notice the car. Tell me, is that the car, the actual car?
Well, we're glad to say that is the actual car. We were
That's
so
amazing.
chuffed. It is, and it's kind of like changed everything for the museum, or it did like about 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago when we acquired it.
How did you find that?
Right, well, it wasn't down to me. The shop next door, Leonie, is Steve Kearns, her husband. He's into his cars, VW actually, but he joined all these clubs, and we saying, look, let's see if we can find the car. So he joined all the clubs. Anyway, long story short, he found it in a farm in North Wales. Now, we've only got a half of it. I mean, people sometimes say...
You got the best half, though.
We've got the best half, because we couldn't get... People say, oh, it's only half, but how would we get the whole car? I think it's about 15 foot long or something, and we just haven't got that room. So he actually had to physically cut it in half, and the farmer's got the back end as a trailer, you know, with those fabulous fins. I always think that's a good name for a band, the Fabulous Fins.
You heard
on
it
the
here
back.
first.
Yeah, at the back. So yeah, so we've got it here, and it's great. And then you know what, that the resonance of that car, you know, the people that come, because going back in the day, the people saying, I watched that video, and I always wanted to be in that car with those guys. Well, now you can.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a picture of the guys at the back as well, so you are technically in the car with all the specials. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. And for us, obviously, that's the standout item in the museum. But we've also got Jerry Dammer's keyboard. I won't say Jerry Dammer's organ, because you're all going to laugh. Everybody does when I say that. But Jerry Dammer's keyboard is up there. The one that Ghost Town was written on, and actually they used it to play on. So absolutely brilliant. And we've got loads of other stuff, of course. It's not just that, you know.
I noticed the replica bedroom from 1970s. I think my bedroom looked like that a bit.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Rude Boy's bedroom, yeah, that's all there, yeah. That's more. I think we pitched that at 80, maybe 81, just so we could get, because you know what people are like. They say that's not right.
Yeah.
So we went through it, and everything in there is totally right. So
Was
yeah.
that the Coventry won the cup?
No, that was 87.
So, okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, Coventry did win the cup.
Yeah, we did it. Oh, yes, we did. Yes.
So looking forward to the village, to the music museum, is what's obviously got Lieutenant Pigeon at the moment. Any plans on the horizon this year for something?
Well, because obviously we're a small museum, we all work for free, we don't have a lot of money, so we tend to put on one exhibition a year. We can't afford to keep changing, and it's a lot of work, and most of the work is down to me and my great volunteers and other people like Mark, who's been great at the moment. So yeah, at the moment we've still got, by the way, there's still a bit of we had Ghost Town 40 years last year, but we've still got half of that. We've kept some of that
Is that
as
just
well.
the COVID closure?
Not so much. We wanted to be, as I said earlier on, I think a lot of people come here for the two-town. We're aware of that. But as I said, we can't constantly keep doing two-town all the time. So we thought, as a compromise, instead of doing something else, we concentrate on the Lieutenant Pigeon exhibition, but we'd also keep part of the Ghost Town exhibition, which works, because a lot of work went into that. So that will be going, and we're already working on next year's exhibition. But you're going to ask me what that's about, and I can't tell you. I'm not revealing it yet.
And what days are you open down there? 'Cause it's not 7 days a week, is it? So
No, it's Thursdays to Sundays, so Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, because it is very much run by myself and my wife with our great volunteers who come in different days. Obviously we need a bit of time to live. So it's been like that for 8 years. We've been around for 8 years now. So it's Thursdays to Sundays, and it's very reasonable to get in. It's only £4 to get in for adults, £2 for students, and obviously
well, you've done a great job, you really have. There's so much to see and do here. If you fancy a day out, folks, come down to Coventry, get in there nice and early, have a look around. You never know who you're going to meet down here. Thank you for having this little chat with us.
Thank you.
It's been great. You've done a lot of amazing stuff in this little village, and I'm sure you'll continue to do so. So like the video, subscribe, and see you next time.